Pretesting students in a performance based class has numerous benefits to both the teacher and the student. In my own teaching, I've been able to pretest more often by utilizing MusicFirst, specifically the exercises in Sight Reading Factory and the content library in PracticeFirst. So I'm excited to talk about this and show you how to do it. First, let's talk about the benefits of pretesting students. Baseline assessment data. Pretesting provides baseline assessment data of each student's current skills and abilities. It helps the teacher understand the student's individual strengths and weaknesses before starting the actual instruction. Individualized instruction. By pretesting students, the teacher can identify the skill levels of each student and create individualized instruction plans. This ensures that students receive appropriate and challenging material that aligns with their abilities. It enables the instructor to differentiate instruction, providing more support to struggling students and advanced challenges to those who excel. Data-driven instruction. Pretesting generates valuable data that can inform instructional decisions. The assessment results help the director identify common areas of difficulty for the group, allowing for targeted instruction on specific techniques, skills, or musical concepts. This data-driven approach ensures that instructional time is focused on the areas that need the most attention, maximizing the effectiveness of the learning process. And finally, tracking progress. Pretesting provides a benchmark against which students can measure their own progress. Regular assessments throughout the year can then be compared to the pretest results, allowing students to observe their own growth and development. This feedback encourages students to stay engaged, work towards improvement, and celebrate their achievements. So let me show you here in MusicFirst exactly what I use and also how to set up a basic assessment. And when we're talking pretesting, pretesting is really any sort of assessment that students would be doing for the first time. So you want to determine the specific parameters or the requirements for the pretest and which platform would work best, PracticeFirst or Sight Reading Factory. I've used both, and I can tell you a little bit about them. If you want to assess specific scales or etudes, um, or even music repertoire, like a phrase or a section of the music, really PracticeFirst would probably be more a better appropriate platform. But if you want to assess skills like sight reading or reading key signatures or even just note accuracy, Sight Reading Factory might be something that's more appropriate. And they both have their strengths. Just using them a little bit differently depends on what you're looking for. So if we are going to use PracticeFirst, they have an outstanding content library that I can show you here. And I favorited some of these things so that they're easy to access and to show you here. Okay. And my favorites from this past year have been a couple of band pieces, Iroquois Sunrise, Haunting on Mountain Melody, Baseball March. These have been some band pieces that my students have played. And as far as pretesting, pretesting scales has been hugely um, productive and just great to hear where the students are at, because if I have students that are already playing their scales proficiently, then I want to be able to challenge them by providing a second octave for certain scales, or maybe increasing the speed, or maybe having them do it memorized. For those students that I hear their pretest of their scales and it doesn't go so well, then that allows me to dedicate some extra time to helping those students. That might be in rehearsal, them going out with our co-teacher a bit more often and helping them with the scale that they need more help with, or maybe just providing them some extra practice time during rehearsal, before school, after school. It just allows to have some conversation with those students that says, hey, you could use some extra time with this, let's give you some extra help. Also, listening to those students play in MusicFirst, I can provide that feedback to them either verbally, just in a one-on-one, or I can actually type in the comments, or using the rubric feature in PracticeFirst. So this is a typical scale pretest here, where they would play the B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. In fact, I can even show you, exactly what this looks like here. So let's go into the actual assignment here. So I just really like using scales because I think scale data provides a lot of information. Can they read the key signature? Do they know their note names? Do they know their fingerings? And also when you indicate a certain tempo, you can really hear those students that are confident and solid because they're going to keeping a very steady tempo. And the ones that really need to spend more time practicing, you're going to hear those tempo fluctuations, or the tempo is going to be very, very slow. So this is just an example of one that I used this past year. Really set up some instructions here where they're going to play these 4 scales in a row without stopping. Their tempo indicator here is between 60 and 100. And then for our percussionists that have to play this on mallets, we want them to record with video so that we can see them alternating mallets rather than playing everything on their right or left hand. Okay. And we've got a little rubric here too that we can use, just a 4-3-2-1 on note accuracy and tempo accuracy, if that's something that you utilize to provide some feedback. And here's what it actually looks like if I go to the task here. Okay, so I can play this for you here. This is going to go all the way down then to the D flat scale. Okay. Further instructions on the info here is they had a score goal of a 90. All the same instructions appear here. Exercise details for all instruments here. Okay. And here, we can see the standard data here in PracticeFirst. Anything in red or yellow, it was either out of tune or it was a wrong note. And then the straight lines indicate a very steady tempo, except right here, little rhythmic error. I'm sorry, the lines are the rhythms, not necessarily tempos. Little hiccup here of the rhythm error. Okay. So this data that I'm seeing and hearing from my students really is super valuable because I can see that this student has done really well on their scale pretest. So I can take them to the next level and provide some advanced instruction, challenge them, and otherwise, besides having them play this entire exercise again. We can also use our library to access concert music to do a pretest. This can be valuable at the beginning of a concert cycle when you're handing out new music and you want to decide that you're going to pretest on a certain piece to see where the students are at. This piece, Iroquois Sunrise, might provide you some data on how well the students know how to slur, or we can just be more general. How are my students' articulations? Do they know how to tongue tenuto? Do they know how to slur? Or maybe you want to go, can they play just the notes and the rhythms accurately? And the great thing about this is you can do what you want. You can decide what you're going to pretest on. Okay. And in order to set this up, I will walk you through the steps. Okay, so we are going to create a task here in PracticeFirst, and we're going to give it a title here. This was the Iroquois Sunrise assignment, and actually we'll call this pretest here. And we need to make sure that we choose practice first here. All right. And then our short description. So we're going to play selected measures with correct notes and rhythms. We're going to keep it nice and simple here. Okay. And we're going to go down to create task. Okay, and we're going to open this in practice first here. And we'll go to my favorites. And we'll choose Iroquois Sunrise. Okay, and we are going to do the full score here. And that way we can select the whole thing at once and make it nice and easy. Okay, so when you want to select a certain area, you want to go to sections and then select mark new section. And then you can simply take these cursor bars and move them to the section that you're going to assess on. So I think we're going to start here right on measure 5. And we'll continue on through these other measures. I think we might have to, yeah, there we go. Scroll down here. Okay, and we're going to move this all the way to this next section here and select assign students. And they can do any part because they're going to choose their part, current selection. Okay. In comment, we could even reiterate those same directions again. Show advanced options. This is where you can put in a score goal, a 90, an 85, an 80, or just leave it blank. You don't have to select something. How easy or hard do you want the grading to be? I found that medium works really well for pretesting. It allows a larger gray area. And it just seems to be kind of the sweet spot for pretesting. And then a tempo goal. For pretesting, you can leave it 100%, or if you want to just slow it down because you know students are going to struggle with a specific tempo, I kind of leave that up to you. And playing mode, again, you can choose, do you want the metronome on? Do you want to use backing audio? I happen to really think it benefits students using it with the metronome. And then we simply here hit assign, and we go back to our assignment here, and it is now assigned. Once your pretest has been assigned to your students, I highly recommend making a huge announcement about it, making sure that you are overly communicating these assignments. Put them in Google Classroom, show them in class, send an email to the students and the parents. Utilize your SMS software and put the assignment in there, put it on the board, because we all know that, well, students are human and they're also kids, and there's a lot of forgetfulness, and it's our job to really help them with that. And I am a huge advocate of really going over it in class and then pulling up the assignment. I've made myself a student in the particular class, so I just log in as student Keith and walk them through exactly how they're going to do that. And you might not need to do this, every time, but definitely at the beginning of the school year, I found that this is hugely important, walking them through the steps and showing them exactly what you want them to do for their pre-assessment or their assessment in general. Okay. And right here, I'm just going to show you a little bit of Sight Reading Factory. I think the best thing about Sight Reading Factory is the fact that you can customize it and create these customized levels to focus in on the skills that you want your students to do. And I really love it for working on key signatures as well as rhythms. So just, for example, we have worked on 8th and 16th notes, both beginner and advanced level, 8th note triplets, dotted quarter notes, really creating these exercises. That way I can hear which students are struggling and which students get it so that I can, again, differentiate my instruction. If you're not familiar with Sight Reading Factory, highly encourage it if it's something that you think you could use after seeing it and hearing me talk about it. And lastly, one of the best things about pretesting your students is providing that feedback, giving your students that constructive criticism. When they submit something in MusicFirst, you can type in the feedback to them. You can even think outside the box and maybe do all of your comments on a sheet that you would then hand back to the students. Whatever you think will help them the most, but definitely give some feedback so that they know exactly what they can continue to work on and practice, because again, this is all for improvement. Overall, pretesting students and on a playing assessment provides really valuable information that benefits both the students and really the whole music program. It enables personalized instruction, effective program planning, progress tracking, and that data-driven decision making, which ultimately leads to musical skills that are improved and a more successful music experience. Thanks for letting me show all these cool Practice First and Sight Reading Factory tools.